No offense, but you really need to shed some weight. I'm talking, of course, about that dead weight on the end of your fantasy football team's bench. Some of these players are like third string running backs, backup tight ends that you really don't need, backup defenses. Come on now. Look, some of these players that just have done nothing for the first couple of weeks don't look like they're going to do anything. Get them out of there. Let's take a chance on some of these players that could do something going forward. These young players, these guys are going to step up because of injury. Let's stash some high upside players, not those guys that you got sitting around doing nothing. I've got several young receivers that I'm kind of excited to talk about, but I'm more excited that I actually get a chance to talk about a tight end. And you look, a lot of people now are talking about Oronde Gadsden II, who's now in the Charger system. Loyal Doll fans who go way back and are old like me, you might remember Oronde Gadsden the first. He was one of these kind of unheralded receivers who came out of nowhere and made himself a decent career. All right, Dan Marino helped him just a little bit, but still, Gadsden, for a guy who was undrafted at that time, put together a solid career. So part two, Oronde Gadsden II. It's a guy who was a late draft pick, but he plays tight end instead of wide receiver. He's a 5th round pick, and look, there's no interest around him because, let's face it, he's 3rd just on his own team in terms of the depth chart at tight end. And as of right now, he's still 3rd on the Chargers as far as tight ends go in terms of routes run, receptions, and all of that. But he's climbing pretty fast. Despite the fact that he's 9th on the Chargers in targets, he's got an actually kind of insanely high 0.47 targets per route run. That means when he's out there, he's getting looks from Justin Herbert. Having an elite quarterback does definitely help his fantasy prospects as well. Gadsden's coming off his first really significant game on offense, 5 catches for 46 yards. Again, this in and of itself is nothing that's going to catch the eye of most casual fantasy football players. Those who play Dynasty, those who know prospects, and those who are maybe Chargers fans would know about Gadsden, but most of you will not. And so that's why I'm bringing it to your attention. This is a player who's got great athleticism because he kind of looks more like his dad, where he's an oversized receiver, like in a tight end body. So he's playing tight end, but he is not out there to block. I guarantee you that. And he's got the athleticism to make contested catches and beat some of these linebackers across the middle of the field. So the good thing with Gadsden, he's in a great offense. Like I said, Justin Herbert has been on fire this year. Something has just clicked here for him this year. And the bad news is he's in the Chargers offense because there's a lot of mouths to feed all of a sudden. Keenan Allen being there has taken over. Quentin Johnson, I guess, is just fully broken out now. And Ladd McConkey is still there. Yes, he is. Don't worry, he'll be fine. Although I hate to say this, again, Ladd McConkey owners, maybe plug your ears for a second. Last week, Gadsden got the same number of targets as Ladd McConkey, wound up with more receptions and yards. Look, the reality, though, is Gadsden is going to be struggling to find consistent targets. It's not like you can depend on him right now in fantasy, but again, you stash here, there's upside at tight end. You want somebody who is in a good offense here, and look, all it takes is an injury to one of those receivers. Gadsden's role will just increase. All right, now on to receiver. Guy whose role is already going to need to increase is Luke McCaffrey in Washington. We know Terry McLaurin battling that quad issue. As of right now, don't know exactly what the prognosis is, but it's not looking good. He's already been deemed uncertain for week 4, and he's seeking out different opinions. It's not a good sign here. Look, this shouldn't be shocking because we know he missed so much of training camp with that contract dispute. And this is what happens, right? Maybe the guy's just not completely in shape, ready for the season. And I know these things happen anyways. It doesn't really matter the reason. The problem is that now Terry McLaurin is probably going to miss some time, who knows how long. And so they need somebody. Look, this is not a deep receiving chart here because you got Debo. Okay, great. Debo is their slot guy. Debo is in the slot for 82% of his routes. Who's playing on the outside? It's Luke McCaffrey. Look, McCaffrey has been so far on the routes that he has run 66% of the time on the outside. He's just kind of that natural replacement for Terry McLaurin. I know some people are excited about Jalen Lane, especially you saw him with that return for touchdown. But that's the thing. Lane is more of a special teams player. He's more just kind of a guy who'll run those go routes once in a while. He's not going to get significant snaps at receiver. It's going to be McCaffrey, and we kind of saw it. He stepped in there late in week 3 when McLaurin was out. And not huge output here, 3 catches, 56 yards. He did score a touchdown. But again, this is why he's a stash, because it wasn't significant enough that most people will even recognize Luke McCaffrey is out there, not maybe realize the situation here, not see that he's going to take a step up in value here. But I'm telling you, because this is just the logical fit. He's going to be the guy who benefits the most if there's a Terry McLaurin injury that lasts long term. Now, if anybody out there isn't completely sure, yes, this is the brother of Christian McCaffrey, the son of Ed. And so, yeah, the lineage here and the name shouldn't be what draws you to him. But you know, he's got athleticism. This guy didn't get really a ton of attention out of the draft because he went to Rice, put up good, not great numbers. He does have that athleticism, though, nice agility score, and he can get open. He just really hasn't had a whole lot of opportunity just yet, and here it is. Now, when I talk opportunity, a guy who's already getting it is Parker Washington, who's in Jacksonville. And Parker Washington putting up modest numbers in his first 2 seasons, right? Every once in a while, he'll kind of show up on the box score and then kind of go away. He has not been dependent on as a starting receiver, and that's concerning, right? Why hasn't he been able to break through? Is this guy who's just kind of a depth piece? And look, I'll just tell you this. Yeah, his separation score, right? His metrics are not elite. This is not a guy who even warrants a reception perception profile because he's not out there enough. Well, he's going to be out there a whole lot now because you see the way this Jags wide receiver room is trending. And just look at the box score from last week. Parker Washington has now all of a sudden looked like a go-to receiver for some reason. We know about the drop issue with BTJ. You know, Travis Hunter starting to become more of a defensive back than a wide receiver. And there's no guarantee either of those things changed. And oh, by the way, I mentioned this on the waiver wire video. De'Ami Brown, free agent acquisition. He's got a shoulder injury. Who knows if he's going to even be out there playing? And so Parker Washington, you know, by default, was the guy that Trevor Lawrence looked at the most in week 3. Yeah, somehow his 11 targets, he got more than Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter combined. Whether you think he deserves those targets or not, doesn't matter, because Trevor Lawrence is looking his way, and that's what matters. And it's kind of insane now, after 3 weeks so far, Washington's target per route run is 8th among all wide receivers with at least 10 routes run. And for what it's worth, Washington does have good hands. He's been on this team for a couple of years. He has that chemistry, maybe with T-Law already. And so, yeah, we hope that Brian Thomas just reasserts himself as the guy here, but I just can't be certain that's going to happen right now. And I do know that Washington is very least going to be involved to some extent. And one thing is definitely for certain, you ask a question on the DraftLane app, we will answer it with personalized feedback. If you haven't tried DraftLane yet, it is a free download, the App Store, the Play Store. If you use code ENDGAME, then you get 10 free credits to use towards your first couple of questions. If you haven't tried DraftLane yet, check it out. The player I'm probably most excited to stash wherever possible is a guy who was high on the preseason. I think a lot of us were, until, of course, it was all taken away from us right before the season with a brutal injury. Cokeheads unite. It's Jalen Coker's time finally to come back from IR. Now, you know how this works. It takes 4 weeks. He's not eligible yet until at least after week 4, but that's why you stash him now, because as soon as he is eligible to come back, people will be scrambling to try to pick him up if possible. You stash him now, and especially if you do have an IR slot open, risk-free. It's funny because just a couple weeks ago, you know, Hunter Renfrow had that big game, and like, of course, he is the current slot receiver for Bryce Young. You know, Bryce Young will target all of his slot receivers, and then that disappeared pretty fast because for some reason they decided they didn't want to see too much of Hunter Renfrow. They're rotating him in and out. Like, Coker was going to be the slot guy, and that's what was exciting, that to see him in this offense in that role, because not only does Young target the slot receiver, this Panthers offense has been pretty pass heavy. You wouldn't know it necessarily by the stats, but they are right now, after 3 weeks, second in neutral pass rate. They're going to want to throw the ball. And look, Xavier Legette has been hurt. It was horrible before he got hurt anyways. They do need Coker here, right? Ted McMillan can't be the only option. And so Coker is going to get involved right away. Oh, and by the way, also the tight end, promising Jatavian Sanders, also hurt with an ankle injury. This is the ideal time for Coker to make a splash. And so, again, this is a guy just to stash. You know you don't have him for week 4. I can't say for sure he's going to be out there week 5. It doesn't seem like he'll be out too much longer, but keep him on the radar. Another offense that needs help at wide receiver is the Dallas Cowboys. You know CeeDee Lamb is going to be out for at least a couple of weeks. See how that goes. And yeah, there's not a lot of help on the horizon here. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but they've got to look in-house. Obviously, George Pickens gets a boost here, but he can't do it all by himself. And so I think the guy I'm most interested next that's on the squad is Cavante Turpin. Now, Turpin, you know, also primarily a returner, right? Great return man. This is a guy who used to play in the UFL or XFL, whichever of those FLs it was. All right, so he's made a name for himself here with the Cowboys. They like him. They're using him more as a receiver anyways this year. And now I think he probably gets the biggest uptick in snaps. You know, already as it stands through 3 weeks, his 23.2% route run rate is higher than Jalen Tolbert. And he's shown better hands than Jalen Tolbert. Tolbert is still inconsistent, has the drops sometimes, and not focused. It's a guy who's got the talent, just can't put it together. You know, Turpin is the prototypical slot receiver. That's where he'll play. 83% of his routes come from the slot, and this will make things easier for Dak Prescott. He can't just target Jake Ferguson, the tight end, every single play, can he? You want a lazy comp here? All right, how about like Wan'Dale Robinson? Feel like it's pretty comparable here. Turpin will get those short targets, right? He has a catch and run ability. You know, he's not going to be a PPR monster, but he should give you a decent floor with the potential to take one to the house every once in a while. And I do have a running back for you. And so I'm just going to come out with it. This is almost all opportunity based rather than pure talent. But look, as I say all the time for running back, it's all about volume, right? Touches. That's what dictates fantasy production. And maybe we'll see a change in Chicago because I think we need one. So Kyle Monangai now becomes somebody you might consider stashing. Now, Monangai is a player who was a 7th round pick, barely drafted here. That's because, well, first of all, runs a 4.6 40, doesn't exactly have blazing speed. Went to Rutgers, put up decent, not amazing numbers at a smaller program there. And 45th percentile speed score. You know, this is not particularly big running back either. So the athleticism does not jump off the page. The production doesn't jump off the page. And so this is purely based on the fact that DeAndre Swift has been really, really bad so far. Despite all the upgrades to that Bears offensive line, Swift is not doing himself any favors. He's just not getting out in front of the line. He's the 6th worst in terms of time spent behind the line of scrimmage. Yet dancing around behind the line, not a good thing. And that's why he's also at negative 21 rushing yards over expectation, performing far worse than he should based on his situation every week. Basically, a fourth of his runs, he's getting contacted behind the line. There's no way you can be successful that way. And you can tell the Bears need to try something else. They are doing whatever they can. They're putting DJ Moore in the backfield. And Monangai has not been great so far with his opportunities. But again, if there's a pure shift here, or Swift also been battling some injuries, if he is out, we do at least have the handcuff. I do still believe in this Bears offense. Like, I know last week was really mostly a result of the Cowboys being just horrific on defense. But still, there's talent here. Ben Johnson seems to have his plan working for him. If Monangai is a part of that, yeah, you should want that in fantasy. All right, if you haven't already checked out all the start sit videos for this week, plus everything else we got to help you win, week 4 right here.